Welcome to the painting zone. Hello there, one and all. It's time, and look at this beautiful HD quality. It's time to paint Sergio the Sax Man. You may notice that he's all brown at the moment. He's not going to finish up that way. That is merely a base coat. So don't be alarmed, he's not actually made of chocolate, although it is the season that I'm surrounded by chocolate in this room, in fact. Not that you can see it on the camera right now, because that would take up valuable screen space. Let's see who we've got in the chat already. We've got Graham, as expected, the live show community regular. We've got Bad Squiddo Games, obviously checking up to making sure I'm doing this miniature justice, no doubt. And Penny's Pit Stop is here as well. So I expect a packed house in this chat tonight, and a roller coaster ride of excitement in the live chat. So get that rolling. So before I went live, obviously, Sergio the Sexy Sax Man from Bad Squiddo Games, he was sprayed with Corax White spray, which I'd never used before, but first time for everything. And then he was base coated entirely with Beastie Brown, because a lot of the colours we're going to be using will look much better with a single coat over the top of brown rather than over the top of white or grey or black, for instance. Coverage should be better. So what colours are we going to be using today? Well, for his flesh, we're going to start off with pale flesh, but he's not going to be particularly pale when it's finished. We're also going to be using glorious gold on the sax, obviously. Then I was thinking, rather controversially, that we might give him orange trousers. So we don't want to make him kind of orange tanned, that would blend in too much with that. Then I was thinking maybe some purple boots to go with it. Why not? And the hair might stay some shade of brown, possibly highlighted up to some kind of vaguely blondish colour at the end. So we might get the yellow out for that. Let's see. Who have we got? We've got Peter in here as well. Hello there. Okay, let's get rolling, shall we? Because I expect fresh faces in the chat. And we want to keep them entertained solidly throughout with my non-stop bombardment of charm and charisma. So, let's begin. Where shall we start? Let's see what makes logical sense. Maybe we should start with the flesh, because when I'm painting the flesh I'm likely to get a little bit on the sax. It's going to spill over either way, so let's do the flesh first anyway. So, pale flesh, let's give it a good shake. And as long as there's activity going on in the chat, that's fine by me. Okay, we've got the old wet palette out again, which was a bit of a dry palette since it hadn't been used in a while, but quickly re-moistened it because everyone needs a bit of moisture. Here we go. Oh yeah, don't forget, keep the comments piling in, and don't forget to like the video as well. I'm not going to tell you to smash the like button because that just sounds dangerous. Caress the like button sufficiently so that it registers the like, but still as gently as you can. So I've got some fancy new lighting aiming directly at Sergio here, so hopefully you've got a nice view of what's going on. I haven't actually painted a miniature for quite a few weeks now. because I've been too busy with other things. That does occasionally happen in life to people, now and then. Everyone does need a little sex in their life. We have Batsuka in the house as well. Hello there. We'll be watching all of you like a hawk for any rogue comments that stray outside the lines of civil discourse. And administering swift, decisive justice. Yes, we're all ready. Some sweet, sizzling, red-hot, spicy, succulent, tender, moist, finger-licking good painting action. I'm going to try to make this a regular event as well. So hopefully, this same time, every week would be nice, wouldn't it? That's how you're supposed to build an audience. Keep to a tight schedule. Yep, Thursday, 2 PM seems like a good time slot to me. We'll see how it does with the viewers, though, because obviously that's what it's all about at the end of the day. It's about racking up those numbers and reeling in the sweet, sweet YouTube bucks. I'm sure this video will bring me in at least 4p. I don't have to worry about damaging the channel's overall viewership because it's not doing that great at the moment. I haven't become one of those channels that I often used to mention, though, where they just continue firing out content for years and years while bringing in 37 viewers per video. It's kind of sad. Actually, the Vermintide videos seem to get about that many views. So if that was my entire channel output, I'd be very distressed, I think. He's going to look quite pale at this stage. But there are going to be multiple washes. So don't you worry about that. Now, this miniature, of course, is available at the Bad Squiddo Games website, of course. And if you're thinking of ordering Sergio the Sax Man, which of course you should, then if you check the bottom of the description of this video, you'll find that there is actually a code you can use to get a free chicken as well. So I'm sure those are going to be clucking their way off the shelves. Almost done with this colour for now. Just getting the old hand done here. Yeah, I changed the camera focus as well, because I'm pretty sure it used to autofocus a lot. I've set it to manually focus directly in this spot now. So not only will you be able to see the miniature in full HD quality, you'll also likely be able to pick up my fingerprints as well and plant them at crime scenes. Okay, skin, stage 1 complete. We've got Daniel here, popped up in the chat as well. Let's see if I've missed any exciting comments. Peter says, tell me of cameras, what cameras? Have I missed something, or are you asking which cameras I'm using? If you're asking what I'm using, then it's the typical ones that all the streamy people use, I think. The good old Logitech C920. 2 of them, in fact, which is mildly annoying to set up when you have 2 identical Logitech devices, especially on open broadcast software. Because it doesn't seem to like one of them. One of them's fine, but the other one, it doesn't like it being in widescreen. So, behind the scenes info trick here. The camera that's pointed directly at the miniature is actually not in widescreen. I've just got it really zoomed in. And it actually stretches way beyond the visible window to you, the audience. So a bit of a trade secret there. Yes, one of them is not owned by me, one of these cameras, should be pointed out. Yes, Logitech is pretty much... Is it the only game in town? That might be putting it a bit too strongly. Okay, let's see if we want to use a different brush now, because we're going to want to avoid any straying onto other parts of the miniature. So let's see what we've got here in the old brush tub. I should have got out all the brushes I was planning to use beforehand, really. But that sounds like too much planning for me. I use a combination of Citadel brushes. Let's see what else. I've probably got some Army Painter in there, have I? Yeah, I think I've got some Army Painter dry brushes, which may be used at some point. I've also got a lot of very, very cheap brushes that I just buy wherever I happen across them, like in some kind of craft shop. And I'll give you an example of those. So this would be one of those brushes here. Very cheap. Usually get them in a pack of about 5 or 10, varying sizes. But for base coats, they're fine. They'll just wear out quite rapidly. Yes, Brad, he does look pale. That's because he's not had multiple washes on his flesh yet. It's going to be heavily washed. Let's do the gold of the Sax now. Glorious gold. We're about to get saxed up to the eyeballs here. Giving it a good shake. Onto the wet palette. And onto the sax. And hopefully this brown will mean that I'll only likely need one coat of gold at this stage. The gold is going to get some serious highlighting as well. There will be a wash on that, let me tell you, and then the highlights will go on. So ideally I would like to avoid touching the flesh with this gold, but we'll see. When I've put all the base coats down, then I'll go back and touch up anything that's strayed. I'm thinking because his sax is gold, maybe we'll do all his chains in silver. Is that how they are on the example miniature? I think they are. Not that I'm copying that too much, since my trousers are going to be a vastly different colour. So anyone who doesn't own one of these, I recommend purchasing one right now, using the code in the video description to get free chicken with it. Anyone who can paint a better one than mine, you will win my admiration, which is something you can't really put a price on. "11 viewers? What?" Brad says make him look extra greasy. I'm not sure about extra grease, but he will be at least greasy to some degree. His trousers will not be brown, no. They're going to be orange. The finest colour known. There may be a finer colour out there somewhere in the universe that we can't yet perceive, because aliens haven't implanted our brains with something. But we can't really factor that in at this stage. So orange, still undisputed number one. Looking very sexy. Okay, that's done for now, I think. There's certain things actually that I can't see with the naked eye, but when I get it on camera, I can actually see little imperfections in my paintwork. So this light is obviously doing its job. More zoomed in than the human eye. No, Ian, I wouldn't have any music playing in the background because I want that 4p that these viewers are going to bring in from the ad revenue. I don't want that going to some faceless corporation. Brad owns 3 sexes. You're going for a glitzy new or oxidized sex. Well, everyone does appreciate a vintage horn, but I think it's going to be quite gold and sparkly, quite shiny. It's good that we have a sax expert in here, though. Okay, what's next? Just getting all the base coats down. Let's do the trousers. So, orange. Saxpert. Okay, here we go. Trouser time. You know, I was actually pondering using some green stuff or milliput and expanding the butt cheeks of this guy. But I thought, you know what? They're already ample. Don't think there's any need for additional sculpting. Check out the locks on Andy. Yes, you do get a good view of my hair from this angle, and it's quite magnificent. I might do his belt in purple to match the boots. Daniel approves of the hair. And Brad has actually pointed out that the hands on the miniature are in approximately the right location for playing a saxophone as well, which someone like me wouldn't notice if there was any issues with that. When you're an expert in a particular field and then you see someone who maybe isn't an expert, who expresses creatively something that you know all too well. I'm thinking doctors watching medical drama on TV. They're able to pick holes in the slight liberties that are taken with the medical facts. Those trousers are looking pretty damn orange, but just a couple of little bits missed. Some of these colours might need a second very thin coat. So over the brown, it's pretty good coverage to begin with. But especially the colours that want to be a bit brighter might add another coat. If you are thinking of adding a second coat, it's typically best to wait until the first one's dry completely. Otherwise, you end up making a bit of a mess. But if the paint's not dry at all, then you can still keep moving it around. The danger zone, though, is when it's partially dry and then you start painting on it and start dragging it around. And that leads to all kinds of mischief, especially with washes. Professionals react to videos are a guilty pleasure of Daniel's. Yes, those are interesting, actually. So I wouldn't mind professional sax player reacts to Bad Squiddo's miniature range, although it would pretty much just be this guy. I don't think there's plans for a range of sax-wielding maniacs. Okay, I think we're going to want a smaller brush now, because we might attempt these silver chains. So we're going to have to be careful not to get too much on the skin. We have got a couple of tiddly little brushes here. We don't want the Citadel fine detail brush at the moment, so we're going to just put that away so I don't accidentally use that. I want to preserve the point on there. Yes, it is a nifty painting handle. Goblin green with a 2p coin stuck to the top of it. A slender, beardless dwarf playing sax, perhaps a musician in the Kings of War unit. Well, the reason I haven't got it on a base yet is because I may use it somewhere down the line as part of a larger unit or a diorama, perhaps. So I haven't based him. Just going to hold him in reserve when he's painted, and then if a unit comes along that I think could really use a sax man, then he will be whipped out. Right, what was I going to do? Silver. Where is the old silver on the paint rack? We've got a couple of different ones here to choose from. Giving it a good shake, as tradition dictates. And onto the chains. Tiny bit of water in there. I'm wary about watering down metallic paints and lead to some weird reactions. This is going to have a wash over it as well. One of his wrists here, of course, has the chain around it. The other one does not, which is fine by me because it's less things to paint. I wonder if a professional sax musician was consulted while this miniature was being made. If not, then I'm sure extensive research was done. That's the kind of lengths that Bad Squiddo Games go to bring you the most authentic, finest quality miniatures. The kind of miniatures that go really well with a free chicken that you could possibly attain by using the code in the description. Okay, now just to make sure that I've identified what is chain and what is hair. So I'm probably going to have to go over the hair again at the end anyway. I don't think we're going to do the little chains on his belt yet because I want to do the purple there first. The chain's just hanging around his neck loosely, it seems. See, does it wrap around his neck? It looks like it does from the official picture there. Yes, the Bad Squiddo Games' attention to detail is legendary, in fact. Just giving it a cheeky rotate here, in case that helps me pick out some details that haven't quite been spotted entirely. It's definitely coming together. Okay, I've got brush soap here. I might actually turn it upside down now, because look at that side. Hideous. But that side, beautiful. I think it's time to use the other side for a bit. I'm glad that you still believe, Brad. Okay, let's try the purple. So we're going to do the boots first. Don't think this guy's going to be finished today, but we're going to try and get all the base coats and maybe a couple of washes in. Enough so that you've got a serious taste of Sax anyway. Purple is very much one of the main Bad Squiddo colours. Try not to stray onto the trousers too much. Don't want to have a huge task tidying up at the end. Sometimes unavoidable though. And really, touching up bits of paint that have strayed onto the wrong part of the miniature, it seems like a daunting task, but it's actually very quick. It's just annoying because you feel like you've already done that part and now you're having to redo it. But just a tiny little spot usually, very quick to fix. Looking good. Brad got a free chicken with this miniature. Good, that means you used your code from my video description, which makes you one of the good ones. Some people in the community certainly wouldn't order 3 Saxes. I assume that you own 3 of these to go with your 3 actual saxophones, otherwise I'd be very disappointed. You only own 1 Sergio but own 3 saxophones yourself, then what kind of person does that make you? Although you did get the free chicken with it though. Okay, time for the belt. I have no idea if purple and orange technically go together. If there's any experts in colour theory in there, let me know. I know orange and blue or orange and black go together nicely. They're opposite on the colour wheel, apparently, which means that it works. It's a very elaborate belt. This has got a lot of chain danglage going on. The yellow in orange complements the blue in purple. Well, I'll leave these things to the experts. "12 likes. It's not bad. If you haven't liked this video yet, then I'm going to have to ask the question again, what kind of person are you? Some kind of monster, I would suggest. Okay, what's next? Most of the base coats have been done. Let's not do the chain on the belt yet, because we'll wait for that purple to dry. So what about the hair? Do we want to just do that in yellow and then start washing it? Potentially. Go on. Let's make him really colourful. Nice bright yellow hair, which will then wash down, rather than leaving it brown. Apparently Brad has 3 different types of saxophone, but only 1 Sergio by the sounds of it. I'm going to have to do a couple of coats of this yellow, because it's not very good coverage at all, because it is yellow after all. Unless you really blob it on, then it usually takes multiple coats. Just lent on a button then. Hopefully it didn't do anything to the stream. Brad admits to being a horrible person. There you go. Can't forget the eyebrows. I'm sure I'll need to do some more work around the eyebrows anyway, but I might as well just pick them out now. The fact that he has his eyes closed as well means that I won't have to worry about painting the eyeballs, which is nice. Dead Gamer here, who's about to do a 2-hour drive to Sacramento. Don't think there'll be any singing on this stream, sadly. David is impressed by the sounds of things there. Do you own a sax, man? Okay, that'll do for the first coat on the hair. What do we want to do next? Let's do some more orange on the trousers now. There's a few spots where the coverage could be better. And of course we're using a wet palette, so the paint is still nice and moist. I don't know exactly how long this episode's going to be. Probably when I run out of painting I can do on this and I'm just waiting for things to dry. I'll wrap it up then. And then I'll have to decide whether to just finish it before next week or come back at the same time next week for the finishing touches. Maybe if there's any boring parts, like if I'm going to do 3 or 4 washes on the same part of the model, that wouldn't make much entertainment just applying those and just watching it dry. So that's the kind of thing I'll do off camera probably. At some point today I might get disturbed by a delivery at the door as well. Expecting some Amazon things. So I wonder if the doorbell in here is activated. If it is, then it might be very loud. But I'm sure you can just deal with it. Okay, next. Let's do the silver bits on the belt now. Good thing about the wet palette as well is for touching up mistakes, you've already got the paint right there and ready to use right in front of you. You don't have to go back and open the pot again. So I'm a very big fan of that aspect of it. Makes repair jobs far less annoying. I say I've been busy, and that's why I haven't been able to do this, but that's only partly true, because even if you've only got a spare half hour in your day, you can always paint something. But the way I operate with painting usually is that I'll take a couple of months off and do no painting at all, and then get into a frenzy and paint a ton of stuff over the next few months, and then take a break again. So we'll see whether that comes to fruition, because I have got plenty to paint around here. Especially if I can start doing one of these streams every week regularly. Especially during a pandemic when there'll actually be more of an audience as well, because more people are at home and able to watch. Should be able to get a fair amount of painting done. Okay, looking good. Daniel is awful at actually using wet palette. I was awful at using it when I had one that I just made myself, but since I bought one, I find that I do use it a lot. I don't apply paint to anything else now, unless it's maybe for other purposes, like if I'm using a vast amount of paint to make a big wash or something, then obviously I won't put that in the wet palette. Or dry brushing potentially. But even dry brushing, I'd want the colour to remain wet so I wouldn't have to open the pot again, so I'd just take some of it and then dry it on tissue or something. So I'd probably still use it for that. So plenty of use out of it. So it's looking very much alive so far. What do we want to do next? Let's go back to the purple and make sure that all that's good, and then we'll do the flesh. So I want to make sure that not too much orange is strayed anywhere onto the boots. There's bound to be some. It is the prime spot for messing up where the two parts meet, obviously. especially if they meet in a corner. So you have to poke the brush as far in as it'll go without it touching one of the surfaces, which is very difficult. But this is why we practice and try to have steady hands. Touching up the old belt now. A little bit of purple straight onto the silver there, but I'll be able to fix that in a minute. Going to see if any orange needs to be fixed where the silver was applied now. Once it's all perfectly neat, then I can start thinking about applying washes. The best part of metal minis too is that they're very easy to strip if you really need to. Yes, they are. I'm always hesitant to strip any models though because I paint pretty slow, and the thought of having to start again is not a very nice thought at all. But sometimes, if you make a total mess of it, unavoidable. We're almost to the touching up of the flesh now. Let's see, a little bit more silver. Almost dropped the brush then. We wouldn't want that, would we? One thing I haven't done actually in the last few months is use my airbrush at all. I only ever really used it for base coats anyway, so it's not taking out a huge part of my technique. Daniel accidentally upended a paint bottle on a work in progress a few years back. That had to be stripped back to metal. Oh dear. Okay, time for the touching up of the flesh. Where we just go around the edges to make sure that no colour has strayed where it shouldn't be. And probably end up straying a bit of flesh colour onto places it shouldn't be. But then we'll just fix those areas. Eventually, it'll be correct. Unless you're somehow able to make it progressively worse each time. think one of his ears has been covered in yellow. There we go. Just neatening him up at this stage since all the base coats are down. What I always say, if you're not that good at painting, or if you're not one of the elite painters, like I'm certainly not, then just make sure it's as neat as possible. Because everyone can be neat, it just takes time. Just get it right, and it'll look okay regardless of how good you are. However, often when I spot messy miniatures that someone's painted, I still look at it and think, you know what, that's the basis of someone who's going to be better at painting than me soon. I can still usually identify that in people. Because it might be messy, maybe they haven't got the control down yet, and all their techniques aren't quite there, but you can see what they're attempting and that whether they've got an eye for colour or an eye for highlighting. If they've got some kind of art background, perhaps, then you get a sense for whether they're going to be good at some point. I see that quite a lot on Facebook. Yes, it does have quite a posterior, doesn't it? You can see why I didn't want to add any extra milliput or green stuff to sculpt enlarged buttocks on it. Did I get any of the GW Gargants? No. Will I at some point in the future? Who knows? If I was going to get any giant GW miniature, I don't think it would be one of the Gargants anyway, but they've got some others that I like even more. I've always been partial to the Khorne Lord of Skulls, so if I was going to get a gigantic miniature from GW, I'd probably go for that. It would only be like a hobby project anyway, rather than for an army. Daniel says, neatness and care go miles. Yes. If you look at any miniature I've ever painted, then neatness is probably the number one positive attribute in them. Okay, what do we want next? Let's touch up the hair and then the gold now. And I'm in no way disparaging my own paintwork with any of these things I say, because I know that some of the things I paint do look good. But there is another level of technique, and techniques, plural, that I don't even attempt, that do exist out there. And I probably never will attempt, because I'm slow enough at painting as it is. So adding like 64 step highlights is not something I'm ever going to do. Daniel says, mistakes are not failures in painting, just lessons for the next time. That's a very positive way of looking at it. Okay, let's make sure the gold is all good, and then we can start thinking about washes as the next step. There's going to be washing and highlighting going on here. But most of the parts of the model are going to get a wash on them next. And after that point, it starts to really come together and look more like a finished product. Okay. I think that's the base coat's pretty much done. If there's any imperfections, they can be fixed later in the highlighting stage as well. But for now, I'm quite satisfied with that base coat look. The sexy Sergio. Brad says, are you going to give him tattoos? There is a lot of skin there, but that might be beyond what I'm going to attempt. We'll see, though. You never know. If I was going to attempt any tattoos on him, I'd probably want to do those before the washes, actually, because I'm going to be using a multi-stage wash on the skin, and I wouldn't want to then mess up tattoos after that point. So I'd probably do them first and then wash over the tattoos. So if anyone's got any tattoo suggestions, then let me know. Batsuka says a heart. Where would it be, though? Like on the bicep or something? Quite a bit of skin on offer. Yeah, the back is potentially open, but the hair does go quite far down, so it might be difficult to put any kind of tattoo between the belt and the hair. So the shoulders, the biceps, the abdominal region. I could do a heart on the bicep. And then if I make a mess of it, it's a simple step of just painting over it again with the flesh colour, since I haven't taken any further steps on it yet, and it won't mess it up too much. So let's attempt that, shall we, before we do any of the washes. Let's get the old red paint wherever I've put it. Here we go. Which side do we want it? Do we want it on side A here? Or do we want it on side B there? Vote now. Bicep A, bicep B. We've got vote B at the moment, which is this one here. Need some more votes. At the moment, B is winning, which is the one facing the camera right now. We've got a vote for A from David. We've got another A from Batzuka. So at the moment, A is in the lead, which is this side here. So I'm thinking, if it is on the bicep, presumably the outside of it so you can actually see it. I'm seeing how well defined the arms are. I think that'll work, because if the sculpt wasn't like super defined what the different parts of the arm were, then it could just look kind of mashed into nowhere, and I'd probably stick it on the shoulder in that case. But it actually looks like the detail's good in that area. So can't actually see it that well. Actually, you can from that angle, yeah. You can see the bulge there, can't you? Because the colour's quite flat at the moment, it's hard to tell because it's only the base coat. So A wins then. So let's get the tiniest brush I can, and then we'll start tatting with that heart. This brush might be okay, actually, the one I was just using. It's pretty small. Do I want to do a black squiggle on the other arm? I'm not sure I'll be able to pull that off. I think I can make a heart shape there. That's not too challenging. Okay, here goes. Let's give this a try. I'm trying to be very delicate about it. Let's see, how does that look? Not quite lumpy enough on the top, I would say. Needs a bit more shape to it. That's a bit better. See, how does that look? We happy with that? Any objections before we move on? I'll just sit here patiently and see if anyone objects to the quality of the heart painting. Looks like people are satisfied with that. You may want to wash the area with the original base coat so it seems like it's under the skin. I think with all the washes that are going to go on there, it'll look like it blends in quite nicely. Bazooka says, do you know if you want to do it that way or have the heart more up and down on the arm? You mean like that angle? I think, because the way he's posed, this is going to be the most obvious heart. So when he's standing with his arm by his side, it's sideways. But he never stands that way because he's always playing the sax. So he intentionally got a tattoo that would show up perfectly aligned to his playing arm. It's a sax specific tattoo. Okay, I think that'll do. Base coat's done for now, unless I spot anything else that's wrong. So, we're going to start with some washes. So what do we want? What have I got on the old Citadel paint holder? Reekland Flesh Shade is on there. Agrax Earth Shade. I think Flesh Shade is definitely going to be used. We're going to be using that on the gold and the skin. Maybe the hair as well. And the orange trousers. So I think that's going to be the main one. So we'll use that. We'll probably use Null Oil on the chains. So that's going to be careful with that, not to get black wash all over the lighter colours. So we're going to start with Reekland Flesh Shade. There's going to be multiple coats of this. We've got Dino in the chat as well. Hello there. 15 likes. This is doing well for a painting episode. Who would have thought that actually promoting the video beforehand and posting it in groups and letting people know that it's coming up has a beneficial effect on the audience level? Who would have ever guessed that? Anybody painting along? I'm tempted to join. Let's see. There is actually a voice channel in the Andy and Rem Show Discord server. If people want to pop in there and chat with each other while they're watching this, then feel free to do so. I would encourage that behaviour, as long as it doesn't interrupt the flow of comments down there as well. Okay, let's see. Let's have... We don't want a brush that's too fat, even though it's only a wash. We want it to be somewhat precise and not stray onto the bits we're not currently working on. So let's just start washing away. Most of these areas are going to be highlighted after the wash. So if it's pooled weirdly, I'm not too bothered because it's going to be adjusted later. Okay, trousers washed. Onto the sax. This is definitely going to get... Just dropped him right on his head. Don't think we've got any paint chips though. Nope. This is going to be heavily highlighted, the saxophone. If you've seen the way I paint gold before, for example with my Abyssal Dwarves or my Stormcast Eternals, then you'll know that I like to use multiple highlights on gold. I find it quite an easy one. It's one I've done a lot in the past. And the flesh. The flesh is going to get several washes probably, and maybe some highlights as well. Maybe even highlights between the washes rather than at the end, which may sound weird. And if anyone's going to make a delivery to this house today, then I'd rather they didn't do it in the middle of the stage, because if I abandon a wash partway through and then come back and have to continue the part next to it, then it can all go horribly wrong. Do the hair as well. Not too bothered about how neat this wash looks because, like I said, there's going to be more steps to these parts as well. Just want to make sure everywhere gets a bit of wash on it. And when this is dried a bit, we'll move on to the Null Oil for the silver. As I was looking at the moment. Dino did a neat little tutorial on Caucasian skin, apparently. usually the way I paint skin is any kind of skin. It sometimes applies to monster skin as well. Start off with a very, very pale colour, and then just apply lots of layers of wash to it is the way I usually go, and then stop when it's at the desired level of darkness. Of course, the other way to do it is to just start off with a very dark colour and then highlight up. Daniel says Sergio looks amazing. Well, why don't you buy 10 of them yourself and get free chicken with it by using the code in the description. "17 likes. This must be a record for a painting video of mine. Okay, so we're waiting for that to dry at the moment. I don't want to go in with the Nuln Oil while that's still drying, because otherwise the washes will start to run together. So, I won't be on this stream for too much longer, I think. However, what I will do before the next episode is I'll apply more layers of wash. And then at the start of the next episode, we'll just be able to go straight into highlights, probably, which is more exciting than just watching washes dry. So we'll probably leave him like this for this episode. Highlights are a much more exciting part than this. So we'll close that paint pot. Let's see. Dino says, my base layer is usually cobalt skin from Army Painter. After that, I highlight with cobalt skin plus a bone colour. So there's him settled for now. Leave him there. So I'm going to end this stream fairly soon. I've been going almost 90 minutes now, so that's not bad. Dino says, then afterwards wash it with Ogren flesh and give it a second wash only on the spots where there is shade supposed to be. Makes sense. I found that putting a wash all over an area and then highlighting on top of that works. But obviously, if you precision wash first, then some of the layers on top that I use normally become unnecessary. I'm thinking, for example, if you've ever seen my Dark Angels Deathwing Terminators, they're kind of bone coloured. And the way I did that was to just paint it bone, then wash all of it in Agrax Earthshade, and then paint all the raised areas in bone again in multiple coats, which I think looks fine, but could I have achieved the same look just with precision washing into the corners? Because the main difference between washing and then highlighting on top of it and using wash as the final step is that when you apply a paint on top of a wash, unless you blend it or you really thin down the paint, or you use multiple thin down layers, is that you can end up with kind of a solid line where the darkness of the wash meets the lightness of the paint. Whereas if you put the wash on last and apply it into the crevices, then if you're careful, then it's probably easier to make it more of a natural transition between the two parts of the colour with the wash going in last, I would suggest. Because you can get more of a fade with the wash, like a glaze, kind of. So, what else have I got in general that I'm going to be working on at some point? Because the main thing is, let's grab this big monstrosity out, which I haven't worked on for quite a while, as I'm sure you're fully aware. We've got this big, hideous monster, my Kings of War Night Stalkers. Tentacles, faces coming out of everywhere, and I've actually made a little bit more progress on it than I remember with the flesh. Faces looking out everywhere. Tentacles all over the place. Hideous pustules. Still a lot more work on it, as you can see, required. But this is the next thing I really want to finish, because I like the big, scary horrible monsters in that army. So I'm looking forward to getting back to that when Sergio is done. Cedar says, is that kit bashed? Yes, it is. It's a Mantic Giant with, let's see, what did I use? It's a Mantic Dragon's head for its hand. In fact, you can see it pretty well on this camera, can't you? In front of my face. So it's got tentacles from a Mantic Hellboy tentacle monster thing. And the faces that are imprinted on it are, I've taken like a cast of faces of the two different heads for the Mantic Giant, and some models from Relics, the miniature game, and there's a Hellboy frog monster head on there somewhere, and there's also a Yoda face on there, which I also took a cast of. And there's other random bits on there as well. There's tentacles from various different companies, and a lot of work went into building that, as you can imagine. And I used both the giant heads once I'd finished, because this guy is obviously having no head. I used both of those heads to build my other Night Stalker miniatures, to build my Dread Fiends, which you may have seen on a previous video. So, let's move him to one side so you can actually see me as I wrap this video up. So we're going to end this one here. I'll do all the washing before the next episode, and then we'll get on with highlights next week. So you can look forward to that. I'm sure you are already. Pencil it in your diaries, same time next week. Until then, what else have we got lined up? Well, probably some Vermintide action again, as we seek to finish Vermintide 2 this time. And then the Andy and Rem show, obviously, back next Tuesday. I don't think we've got a topic for that one lined up yet. I'm working on some guests, so you can be excited for that. I haven't got any nailed on yet, but we are putting feelers out there, working on it. You can only have the finest quality guests on that show, obviously. Got to be very picky to make sure that they keep up the entertainment levels that our audience are accustomed to. And also, the replacement for the Forest of Rem / Witch Coven, the adventure, is going to be a multi-person adventure. Multi-person D&D style adventure that you can look forward to seeing on this channel as well. So, Daniel is going to eat. Yes, I hunger as well, so I'm going to get some food too. So, let's put up this wonderfully photoshopped thumbnail that I made quite a while ago. It's not that impressive really, is it? I need to get a professionally made one done. So, don't forget to tune in to all the upcoming videos. Don't forget to like this video if you haven't already. Don't forget to subscribe. What else do I want you to do? Don't forget to check out all the links in the description, obviously. That's where all the juicy action is. Especially if you want to donate money to this channel to keep it afloat in these turbulent times, so I can act as the lone beacon of light leading you towards the lighthouse in the darkness and the pain and suffering that last year and the start of this year is possibly inflicting upon us. Don't forget, give me all your money and that'll allow me to do that. That's how the world works, right? Yeah, let's go with that. Don't forget to buy yourself a Sergio and use the code in the description to get a free chicken with it. And maybe you could put the chicken on Sergio's base, like dancing along to his mad saxing. And Brandon says it's a fine way to start my workday. Yes, fine way to start anyone's day, listening to me and looking at the fine paintwork that I apply with my well-honed skills. And now it really is time to wrap this one up, everybody. Daniel's confirming that Sergio is a great mini. Yes, it is. Don't forget to comment on the video after it's finished as well, not just the live chat, because comments, apparently, YouTube finds those to be quite important. And if you get a lot of comments, that does good stuff, I guess. So, all that remains to be said is good night out there, even though it's not really night. Whatever you are.